Leaving your marriage is hard. Leaving your marriage when you have two kids is harder. What will happen to the kids? Where will the kids stay? All of these questions have to be answered by moms making a decision to get a divorce. We have a very brave young lady today with us, Sejal Sarathia, who made that decision. Sejal, welcome to Soul Talks with Alka.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. We're happy to have you. This has been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. I know we've been talking, but thanks to COVID,
Yes,
things got all messed
we
up.
can do this still. So
yeah.
So Sejal, tell me, a lot of women stay in marriages that are not ideal or not good, or sometimes even harmful because they're worried about what's going to happen with their children. So talk to us about how you made that decision.
It took me a while. I'm not going to lie. It wasn't an easy decision, which I think is what a lot of people respected when I had come to finally terms to tell people, and especially family. For me, it was more, I put in the time, I put in the effort, I tried everything. And I voiced my concerns in the marriage. We went through marriage counseling, we did a lot, and it still wasn't turning around in the way that I was in hopes of it turning around. And after, for me, trust is very important. And once that continues to get broken, and it continues to happen time after time, I feel like you just reach a limit. And, everyone I've ever spoken to has always said to me, like, you'll know when you'll know. Like, no one can convince you, no one can tell you otherwise. And it was the truth. Like, an incident happened. And at that point, I knew, I was like, I'm done. I can't continue this. My little girls constantly knew us as, oh, well, mama and dada, all they do is fight. That was a little stab in the heart for me. And I think that really opened my eyes into like what I wanted for them and what I wanted to show them as a mom and as a role model, to not stay in something just because you're married and just because you have to. There's no such thing, and you come to a point where you're like, I'm done. And I tried, I put in the effort, I gave it my all. And now it's not fair for me or my kids to continue being unhappy, because the unhappy, as you being unhappy, you project that onto your kids, project that onto your life, a daily life and everything. And so to me, it was unfortunate, but I had to make the decision. And if I didn't, I knew I'd be miserable. And that was something I just didn't want. I wanted to become a better person, better mom, most of all. So, and to my girls, I wanted them to grow up knowing that a marriage is full of love and laughter and happiness. I mean, of course, ups and downs with everything, but majority of the time, that's what I want them to know. And that wasn't there for them. And so for me, that decision, didn't come easy. It was 10 years in the coming, but it came, and I knew. And at that point, there was really, honestly, no turning back for me.
Yeah. But did you worry about what are friends going to say? What is family going to say? What is society going to say, right? Because your social life changes.
So what will people think?
Yes.
Has been I hate it. It was, I have to say, the reason why it took me so long to make my decision.
Yeah.
I felt like I knew very early on that I wasn't happy. And unfortunately, it was what will people think? Yeah. What is society going to say? I'm an Indian woman with 2 little kids. How would I do this to them? How could I do this to my life, like my family? And it was always about everybody else. And when that moment came and I knew I was done, I was like, I don't care anymore. It was like a weight that got lifted off of me, because I made the decision for me and my children, and that was it. I didn't think about what everyone else would think. My whole family was shocked, to be honest. It was quite a show that we put on for a while, and no one knew, because again, what will people think? So I never voiced any of what was going on. Only our friends knew. My friends were very supportive. They understood my decision, and they knew that it didn't come lightly. Like, it wasn't just like I woke up and I was like, all right, that's it, I want to get divorced. No, it took the time. And after a while, I just, you have to stop caring what people think, because if you don't, you're just going to live for everybody else, and then you'll be on your deathbed regretting your entire life. Yeah. And that was the one thing I did not want. And especially with 2 little girls, like, I didn't want them thinking that they didn't have a choice. always have a choice. Like, it's your life and you only live it for yourself. And at the end of the day, you have to be happy with yourself. And if you're not, you got to make the right changes.
Absolutely. And they're watching you, right? The kids they say, don't do as
Everything.
I say, do as I do. So the kids are watching you. Kids are watching what mom is saying versus what mom is doing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So once you got divorced, right? Getting divorced is one. Then it's like, okay, now what happens from here? What happens to the girls now? Who gets custody of the girls? Where will the girls stay? The co-parenting part of it. How has that aspect been for you?
I have to say, it was really tough in the beginning. It was tough in the beginning because the divorce was one-sided. It was more on me than it was on him. And, luckily for me, we also didn't go through a nasty divorce. We went through a mediation because that was what I wanted for the kids. I didn't want to make this. I've heard horror stories of divorce.
You were lucky.
I was very lucky, and I'm very blessed in that sense because I'm thankful for the fact that we were able to get through this fairly quickly. My whole thing took about a year. We went through mediation. I was very much into, let's just do this as peacefully as we could possibly do it for the children, and he's a great father to the kids. I can't take that away from him.
Nice.
It's just that our connection wasn't there. We got married very young. We grew apart as opposed to growing up together. And that was a lot of it. And so, for us, it was, let's just do this as peacefully as possible. We both agreed that we would do 50% custody. So that way we both had enough time, because again, the kids were very young. This was 3 years ago. My youngest one was 2. So it's 2 and 5. So it was rough. And, it was hard for them in the beginning, but we made it work. We made it a point that we made sure we split the time together. We spoke to the lawyers to see what the best split was for the time, given their age. And we just, we worked really hard. It was rough. It was rough for the girls in the beginning. They went through a huge transition. My older one hated me for a little bit, unfortunately. And that comes with the territory because she didn't understand why, this was all happening. My younger one didn't really know much of what was going on, but, we gave it our all to make this work. So it was our number one was always the girls. It was making sure that they were okay, making sure they were, taken care of. And I was traveling quite a bit at that time too. So he was very flexible with my travel schedule. And so, at the end of the day, it's like, as long as the two of you want to make it work for your kids, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that they're happy. Yeah. And again, it's not easy, but as long as you focus that on the kids and that's all you keep telling yourself, telling him, and, vice versa, it kind of eases up a little bit.
Yeah. Are the holidays harder? Because I'm sure you have to split holidays.
I have to say the first year was extremely hard. I think for him, I was very selfish and I was like, I want the kids for everything. So they were with me for the first year with all the holidays. Then last year, Christmas morning, they weren't with me. And that was the first time that I felt like, oh my God, like they're not here with me. And like, where are they? Like they should be here. I should be waking up with them, opening up presents. And, it was hard. But again, it comes with the territory, and I've learned to embrace the time away now from the girls, unfortunately, because I have to. Otherwise, I'd have to just stay miserable. But now I've, taken up that free time to focus on me, focus on healing, focus on like my own mental health, and just, doing things that moms don't usually get a chance to do, like going and get a mani and pedi, getting a massage, and filling in the time, basically, But holidays are definitely rough. But again, we work together very closely to make things work. So even with Diwali, we split the time. So that way they were with him for one day, they were with me for one day. Even Christmas Day last year was rough. They weren't there in the morning, but then they came in the afternoon. So it's just, we take each other's like whole emotion into the whole picture as well when we think about it.
That's nice. You have a good understanding for the kids.
We do. We absolutely do. And because we know that they're still young, they're very young. So it's, important for us to make them feel like no one's giving them away or no one's, sending them off. And I think that was a huge hurdle we had to come across, because I think, both my girls were like, why do we have to go there? Or why do we have to go here? Or why do we have to keep going back and forth? And it was a rough transition.
And actually, that was my next question is, how did the girls handle shuttling, right? Back and forth? And did you have to talk to them? And did you have to explain things? And especially because they were so young, how did they, how did they process that information?
They didn't. I'll be honest. They were so little. I mean, again, my younger one was 2 at the time, and she had absolutely no idea. Like, she didn't really quite get it. My older one she was like, I don't understand. She used to like have a lot of tantrums, lash out at me. So it was a very rough transition in the beginning. She didn't understand why we couldn't live together, why we had to move, why we had to do all this. And it took a lot of time, patience on both ends for us to, and the crazy thing is we were also going through our own emotions at the time. So it was hard to balance and find the time to, talk to her properly, to say, this is, unfortunately, it'll get better. It's just a little rough transition. We just kind of got to get into a rhythm. But it was a lot of talks. I don't know how much they actually took in and understood, but I was very, from the beginning of this whole process, open and honest with them.
But did you ever regret that, I shouldn't have left him because this is too much work? Or was it that, I'm glad I still made the decision because for my mental peace, I needed it?
Combination of both. I'll be honest. Yeah. It's definitely a combination of both. In the beginning, I was full of regret. I was like, what did I do? My whole life did a 180. I don't know what I'm doing. I was 25 when I got married. I was with him since I was 23. So I was a baby, and I'm like, wait a second, I got to live on my own. I got to figure out my own system and my own place and affording everything and not having double income and figuring out how to make life even work with me being busy at work and what I was doing when I was traveling a bit. And it was hard. And there were a lot of times that I was like, shit, I shouldn't have done it. Maybe I want my old life back. And there's still times where I miss it. I'm not going to lie. It's different being all under one roof, having that family feeling, and then having to split that all up and knowing that you're the reason that happened. Yeah. So it's a lot of healing that I'm still heavily working on.
So how do you process that guilt for yourself? Do you go for therapy? Do you go for counseling?
Yeah, I've been going to a therapist. I am very open about going to one. I think it's very important for everybody, to be quite honest, to be going to one. He has been my saving grace. He was actually my marriage counselor as well, who then turned into my, therapist. And I was going to him quite a bit in the beginning, talking things through. And, it's a lot of just, it's not enough, but validation that, you didn't make the wrong decision. You process this the right way, you handled it the right way. And it's just knowing and acknowledging, that no, you're not in the wrong here. You're okay, you're gonna get through this. Yeah. And it's just having that person to be there to tell you that, even if they're not sitting there, telling you exactly, okay, take deep breaths, do this. Yeah, of course, we all know you could take deep breaths, do some yoga, do some meditation, but I sit there for meditation and literally there's a million thoughts running through my head. So I'm not sure if that works. So having a therapist to be able to just let everything out and just talk and not have to worry about any judgment or lash back or anything. It's just there to listen and help you process things in your head. And it was very helpful for me. And, I also had a great group of women that I was surrounded by at the time that were always there for me, for everything. So the combination of the two, and plus my mom, I have to say, saving grace, that woman, she is she didn't understand it in the beginning, but my parents both they're my rocks. They came around so quickly and they were everything to me throughout the process. I couldn't be more grateful for them, for the way, especially given the background, given being Indian, not understanding everything, not knowing. They were in the dark forever. And I came to them out of nowhere with the news and they were like, wait, what? What's happening?
Yeah, they didn't know, right? They didn't have any idea.
No idea. And so, my mom was she was my savior through it all, I have to say.
Are you in a relationship now?
I am.
Are you? Okay. And are you seeing that you are more aware of what you need, not making the same mistakes? Has therapy helped with that? Because it's also important. They say in love, you get what you think you deserve, right? So are you working on yourself to get the love that you want?
Absolutely. And that took time.
Yeah,
I think learning myself was a big thing, and I'm still learning myself. I feel like I learn myself daily. But realizing what my needs and my love language, was a huge factor in everything. I took the time for myself. I figured out what I wanted, what I didn't want, where the direction I wanted to go in my future. And that kind of drove me to realize, okay, well, I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of my needs. I'm aware of my flaws. I'm aware of my assets. I'm aware of it all. And now it's finding someone that's going to complement that. And
nice.
so, luckily for me, I was able to have that and find it. And so, I'm very happy now. I'm
Yeah,
not going to lie. So it's been good. But it's, again, with that also, I have to say, the insecurities, the fears, all of that still do come into play. And
absolutely. You're
unfortunately,
human.
exactly, you're human, and you're still working through that. So even entering a new relationship, it was hard in the beginning because it was a struggle of trusting, feeling the need of, okay, allowing myself to open up, because what if I get hurt again? What if I have to go through this again? Like I don't know if I could handle that. And so I was very guarded in the beginning. I was very insecure in the beginning. I was very hot-headed, and my temper was on a high, and everything was a trigger. Everything, any little thing that happened is trigger. And I'm like, I'm losing my mind. So
Yeah.
it took time. It took a lot of time and patience, and every day it gets better.
Yeah. And how are the girls? So a lot of times mothers will say, you know what? I don't want a guy in my life because I don't know how my girls will react to it, right? I don't know how he will be with my girls. So how was that? Was that playing in your mind when you're going into a new relationship as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to say my relationship's a little bit different. He was a friend of mine,
Okay.
so the girls did know who he was prior to.
Okay.
Um, but when I finally did tell them, like, okay, like, we're in a relationship, and this is like mommy's new boyfriend, and like explaining that was a little like, they were like, okay, and they were just happy. They
Okay.
didn't, they're little. They
They're
don't know
little.
better.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, well, mama, you're happy. And like,
Oh,
and so for me, they were happy, and it was kind of great, like, and they mesh very well together. They get along perfectly. He's a great, father figure to them. He loves them dearly, and they love him, and it's been nice. Like, I think they've handled the whole divorce and the transition. I mean, even my ex is dating somebody also. They've opened up to her as well. Like, it's an interesting blended way of it all working out, but it's working out really great.
that's awesome. So for someone who is, sitting on a fence, not sure, should they get out? Should they not get out? What is your advice to a woman, to get out of the marriage, not to get out of the marriage? What are the steps they should take just so that they know when is it the right time, or how to make that decision if that decision needs to be made?
I'll be honest. Like I said in the beginning, you'll know when you know. There's just, I can't explain it. And again, so many people have told me this, like so many friends and people I've talked to, acquaintances that went through a divorce. I kept asking, that was like always my first question.
Yes.
How will I know? Like, what do I do? And how do I make the decision? They're like, there's no decision to make. You'll know.
Yeah,
Like, you'll just know.
I
And
agree. Yeah.
unfortunately, it's hard for me to say, okay, well, weigh out your pros and cons and make a list, and you could do all of that, but at the end of the day, that's not going to help your decision. This isn't like what am I going to eat for dinner? Like,
Right, right.
what outfit am I going to pick out? It's more of like a life decision. And a lot of things that I did think about. Obviously, I thought about it a lot more than
Yeah.
when I actually pulled the trigger. And the things I thought about was, okay, what am I going to do with my job? How am I going to handle living on my own? Can I afford to do it? What would my budget be? That was, unfortunately in this world, we have to think about finances, and
Yeah.
that's huge. And my big thing was, everyone's like, oh, well, you get child support, you get alimony. I was like, no, I don't want to do any of that. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be able to do this on my own if I'm going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. And so I actually did sit down at one point and figured out a budget and said, okay, this is my job, this is my salary, this is my monthly bill, this, if I do this and do that and find a place that's this amount of money, what would I be left with? How can I manage? Can I still take care of the kids properly, give them the life that they still have? That was a big concern of mine. And, and again, like, I feel like when you do know, and you'll figure it all out, and you will, because even though I made that budget, it all went out the window because when I changed jobs, everything got changed. So it just comes with the territory, and you will figure it out.
You'll figure it. Yeah, it's methodical. It's an answer, but it's one step at a time. And you may do all of that reasoning and may realize that, no, I don't want to get out because I'm happier. The pros and cons are happier to be in the marriage. And sometimes we think the marriage is bad, and it's not really. It's just that you're looking at the glass half empty. You don't know. But until you do that analysis for yourself, it's hard to make that decision.
And I highly recommend, if you're in that position, speak to a therapist. Now it's so easy. You could do it on your phone with a Zoom call like we're doing. You can get on a phone. You could talk to them on the phone, if you can't get to one in person. There's just so many options out there. And I highly recommend just like talking things out with somebody that has no back end of anything, right? Like there's someone that's just so like going to give you the honest opinion and actually help talk you through everything, think through everything. Because a lot of times, for me, it was a long time coming. Because mine was solely, it was trust-based. It was just not getting communication-based. It was a lot of factors that went into it. And even though I knew when I knew, I still did talk to a therapist prior to that. I mean, we tried marriage counseling. And I'm a big proponent on like, you got to try everything before you call it quits.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like half-assing anything. So it's like, I'm going to give it my all before I call it quits.
Absolutely.
And, that's why I always say to people, like I've had friends ask me, well, how do you know? And I'm like, well, you don't. Unfortunately, you don't. And then when you do know, you'll figure it all out. But, I highly recommend you talk to somebody, or I highly recommend that the both of you try to make this work and have an open line of communication. Because the sad part is, unfortunately, in the Indian culture, communication is so like not normal in a marriage.
Yeah.
It's very like high level. And I think that's like the worst thing for all of us, because no one's voicing their deep down, like, this is what I'm feeling.
And it's weird that you say that, because you're not first generation Indian and you're second generation Indian. You seem to have the same issues that someone who's first generation Indian would talk about, right? So sadly, it's not that it changed generationally.
Yeah. And that's well, I mean, you learn from your elders, right? So like you pick up from that, and that's how it is. I mean, I don't like, I love my parents dearly, but their communication skill, I'm like, oh my goodness, like, you guys are just like, what are you doing? Like constantly. But but they have this like weird love for each other, and it's just like, it's a bizarre love, but they're great. But at the same time, I'm like, some of the things that I'm like, I'm like, Mom, let's just talk to him. Oh no, I can't talk to him about that. I'm like, why not? Right. And so for me, I was very vocal. I've always been very vocal about how I feel. And I think that's very important. Yeah. And that's why I always say, I'm like, you have to be vocal in your marriage, and you have to communicate, because that is the number one. And, I tried that. I tried being vocal. I tried, everything. And that's when you kind of like, you're giving it all, and then you realize, okay, and then something happens, and then you'll just be like, all right, you know what? I'm done.
I'm done.
Like, call it quits. Yeah. But unfortunately, I always say, try as hard as you could try before you say I'm done, because it's not easy. It's definitely a very hard transition. And this is not for me to tell people don't do it if you're unhappy. Listen, happiness is the key to life. I mean, I can't tell you enough how much happier and how much of a weight was lifted off when I made this decision, like the decision to move forward.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, that this is what had to come, because I'll be honest, at 25, I never thought this would be my life.
Yeah.
Right. Like I never sat there and was like, all right, well, this is just my first marriage.
Yeah.
My second one, no, like I never in a million years would have thought, it would be me. And unfortunately, I think that's, no one expects that. No one goes into getting married expecting to get divorced. But at the same time, why live an unhappy life?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It can't get any worse than that in my eyes. Like to be unhappy with somebody and not be able to live your life, like your kids see it. Your kids see right through it more than you know. And it's crazy. My 2 and like 4-year-old at the time, like they knew.
Yeah, for sure. So
And
for all
you
the
can
moms who
feel
stay in for the kids, don't stay in for the kids.
It's not worth
The
it.
kids will see right through it, and that's not a good role model for them. They don't do it for the kids. If you want to stay for yourself. Don't make the kids the scapegoat to stay in it, because you're not really helping them. That's from every single thing. I mean, I don't have kids, but for every single parent, every person that I've heard, every therapist, everyone says the same thing. Be a role model, but don't stay in it for the kids. Don't stay in it for the kids if it's miserable.
Because you know what, the backlash of that when they grow up is so hard.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. You know, they'll their vision of what a marriage should be will be skewed, and it's not healthy.
It's not.
I don't think it's healthy at all for you, for anybody involved in that. You know,
absolutely. And Sejal, I want to thank you. This is not an easy topic to talk about, and it took us some time to talk about this, I think. And you know, you had to decide at your own time. Again, when you know, when you knew you were ready to do it, you were ready to do it. Until then, it was just that. Yeah. But I wanted to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on Soul Talks with Alka. I want to thank you for sharing your story. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next week on Soul Talks with Alka. Thank you.